Today on Ranch Hand Tips, we're going to talk about land management, because if you own a ranch, a farm, or you just have a lot of acreage, you're responsible for that property, you're responsible for the livestock on that property, and you're also responsible for the property's little ecosystem. A lot of people don't really think about how important it is to maintain certain boundaries of their property, the ecosystem within it, and make sure that they're doing everything that is necessary to make the land safe for themselves, for others, and keep it in balance with wildlife. So let's start with fence lines. Why are fence lines important? Yes, they keep your livestock in. Believe it or not, if your livestock get out and they cause an accident, they cause damage to somebody else's property, you're responsible for that. Fence lines are definitely important when it comes to livestock, but fences also serve as a protection to your property. They protect your property from other people's livestock. They protect your property from wanderers. If somebody comes onto your property and you have a body of water and they drown in it, or they come on your property, even if they get bitten by a snake, in today's world, you could get sued for that. Keeping people off your property is an essential part of land management as well. So fence lines serve as a multifunction system in protecting you, protecting your land, and helping to keep things balanced. We like to check our fence lines on a regular basis because we want to make sure that we know where the damaged areas are.
If you look to your right, you'll see the remnants of the old barbed wire fence. What's left of it.
To make sure that wildlife hasn't torn down a fence anywhere, or one of our livestock.
Looks like it's back in the fence. Well, I can't see any cows, so it's back in the fence where it's supposed to be. Also, I found over there, right behind Daddy, I found a broken fence. And I think that was the cow going through.
The other big thing that we have around here are storms. Yeah, we had a storm come through here the other day that, well, as you can see from behind us, it kind of just ripped through some trees and
it broke my tree house right there. You see, one wooden got cut down.
Broke his tree house. We are going to go and survey the scene and make sure that we don't have any other big trees laying across our fence lines. And figure out a game plan to make some repairs if we do.
We went out and walked on the field. We saw a tree that fell on top of the fence line. So we had, and also a tree fell on the fence line.
That's not good.
That means we can't climb over it.
That means that you and Daddy have a lot of work to do back here. Storms are constantly knocking trees down on our fence lines. When we're out checking our fence lines, we're not just looking at the fence line and making sure that everything is secure. Because this property is an older property and there have been a lot of different people over the years maintaining it, one of the things that I have noticed is that there are a lot of old fences that have been cut down, or you'll see in a lot of cases where instead of somebody taking down an old fence, they just put up a new fence line right next to it. This fence line is actually partially maintained by the pasture next to us. It's actually on our property. Some of the fence lines are on there, some of them are on ours. What they did here was they came in and they put up a newer fence right in here. One of their cows got into ours. The old fence is left here. Some of the areas that have been clipped were hanging out into our pasture, which can easily get stuck around a horse's leg. We've been trying to fold some of those pieces and secure them back on the old fence. With this newer fence up in here, we don't need the double
barrier of protection that we've got going on here.
Those old fences eventually break down and become a hazard. They become a hazard to wildlife, they become a hazard to livestock, they can become a hazard to people.
Could come up here because of
That is dangerous. You get that one? Put it just onto the inside of our fence line because our horses won't come up here, and leave it in this pile. And then Daddy will come back and clean them all out, okay?
When it comes to livestock, having livestock on your land is a major part of maintaining your property.
One of the benefits of having horses is they really keep these woods back here clean and clear, which makes it easy to walk through. Kind of nice, actually.
Our horses, for example, are actually maintaining our woods for us.
You can see where the horses stop, right there. You can tell everywhere that they've been up in here because they just keep it completely cleaned out.
During the summertime, when you have the most growth in the woods, the horses are actually out there vegging out underneath the trees. They like it because we have streams that run through them, we have ponds, there's water sources, it's cooler than being out in the fields, so they actually spend most of their time back in the woods. As a result, they keep the floor of the woods very clean, and they continue to provide nutrients to the trees and the soil back there with their manure, but they're keeping the weeds down, they're keeping areas of it cleared. And as years progress, the more time the horses are on the property, the more area they cover in the woods. That brings me back to those old fence lines, because as the horses continue to clear areas of the woods and trample things down and help the leaves and brush decompose into the ground, they're revealing some of those old fence lines. And you have to constantly be on top of it, because as an area gets cleared out, new strands of barbed wire start popping up from the ground, and those can cause serious injury to the horses. So as they kind of clear out areas, we go in and make sure that there are no hazards that are being uncovered. Another important aspect to this is forest fires. You'll notice that forest fires tend to get completely out of control. Naturally, forest fires would occur on a regular basis, and they help maintain the brush in forests, and they also help make sure that your leaves and other things don't pile up to about 6 or 8 inches, because once they pile up to that amount, they can become a serious fire hazard if lightning strikes or anything else, and there's a lot of material there to burn. Livestock in your woods will actually help break that down faster. So if you go back in our woods and you notice areas where our livestock has been, you'll notice that it's mainly dirt. The areas where they haven't been, that's where you're going to see a lot of leaf buildup and other things that could become a fire hazard. Your livestock is really helping to maintain your property on a whole new level when it comes to clearing out the underbrush in your woods and keeping things like leaves decomposing faster by smashing them down. That is a huge benefit to you because it's making the property safer. It's maintaining it from being overgrown and having too much fuel to burn. Because we have livestock on our property and we let them roam freely, one of the things that we have to check on a regular basis as well is the water sources. We have old ponds. We actually have 3. One of them is completely washed out, but as the dams of those ponds get damaged or they start to wash out because they weren't built correctly in the first place, several things happen. Number one, the water source in that pond becomes less drinkable. The less amount of actual water that's in there mixed with the density of leaves and junk could affect the quality of your water. Maintaining your ponds so that they're deep enough so that the water can rise to a level where it can be better naturally filtered is an extremely important thing. The other thing that happens when your ponds start to break down is that your stream beds will drain faster because there's less backup down the stream bed. If further on down where the pond is, it's just pouring out. So we're constantly checking our ponds, we're constantly checking the water levels, we're also watching our stream beds, because depending on the time of year, those stream beds could be full or they could be empty. And if they're emptying out, we want to know how long after it rains does it take for it to empty out, because we want to make sure that we're maintaining an adequate resource for our livestock, and not just our livestock, but the wildlife on the property. We want to have wildlife on our property for the same reasons that horses and livestock are helping to maintain our woods. Wildlife helps maintain your woods and your land as well. It is a natural property management solution. There's reasons for every animal in an ecosystem. And so one of the things we're doing with our property management is we're making sure that we're managing our ecosystem, making sure that there's a proper water source for them. By also maintaining areas and habitats for the wildlife, we're deterring them from coming up closer to our house, because we're offering them a much better location somewhere else. So we're allowing them onto the property. We're excited for the fact that we have predators that help keep our pests in line. You kind of have this chain of command in habitats. Maintaining those water sources is also not only providing a water source for the wildlife, but it's also maintaining a food source for a lot of the wildlife. Having areas that we specifically maintain as habitats for the wildlife and welcoming the wildlife onto the property, we're welcoming more wildlife and we're keeping it in balance. And we have less problems with wildlife because they have their areas, they have their resources to go to, and they're not messing with our resources. That's a very important part of property management that a lot of people overlook. In fact, a lot of people think that the best thing they can do is go out and remove wildlife from their property, and it's the absolute worst thing you can do. Keeping your fields mowed and weed-free is also an important part of this. That's something that we've been lacking on over the past year because we were building the house. As we get that back into order, the fresher the grass, the better it is for grazing on, the more deer you're going to attract. The other thing that we're going to be getting into on Ranch Hand Tips as far as property management and kind of building an ecosystem is we're actually going to start creating man-made habitats for some of these animals. For example, bat houses. Bats are probably one of the greatest bug controls you can have on your property. They will eat over 1,000 mosquitoes in a night, or they could eat over 600, just one bat, over 600 moth-sized insects. Putting bat houses on a property is extremely important. There are a lot of myths behind bat houses and what makes them effective. So when we build our bat house, we're gonna go over all the design criteria and as well as the location criteria. We're also going to be putting in wood duck nesting boxes near some of our ponds because we want to attract the wood ducks. They help maintain the water. They're an extremely important animal. The wood duck boxes are just a great way of helping the wood duck population and conservation. And that goes for bat boxes as well. Bats, believe it or not, are actually killed off yearly from pesticides. If you're really interested in maintaining your property in a natural way, the bats are your best pesticides. Bats don't just eat insects, but they also help pollinate things. And talking about pollination, another thing we're going to be doing, and this is a great way to help maintain your property and produce a product, is we're going to be building beehives for honeybees. Basically, the honeybees are going to help pollinate things as well. So if you're growing crops or you're growing vegetables, bats, honeybees, these are animals that are going to help you in that situation. Then you really can't effectively have a property the size of ours without maintaining an ecosystem. And that's probably the most important part of ranch management, is making sure that your ecosystem is functioning the way it should, that it's in balance. With our wildlife, we like to make sure that we know where the wildlife is going so that we know that our efforts are actually working. So we look for signs of wildlife, we look for tracks in the ground. We like to keep tabs on where certain animals are going, where they're frequenting. If we are getting attention from one particular species in a particular part of your property, isn't necessarily a bad thing, but we do want to make sure that we know where each species is going, where they're frequenting, so that we can better help facilitate our little ecosystem. I hope this video helps you start thinking about what you could be doing better to maintain your property, and especially maintain your property's ecosystem. We'll be exploring a lot of different ways to do it, from building ecosystems in ponds as we restore our ponds, to helping to attract more wildlife to our property that we feel is beneficial to us. If you have any comments or suggestions, please put them below.